Welcome to the Tomosi Business Training Series. The basis of these sessions is to support the Tomosi Group staff and management to raise their capabilities and performance. The series is also a platform to share our experience with young entrepreneurs, making an effort to build their startups in Uganda and across Africa.
Good morning, our live audience and those of you who follow regularly our discussions. But in this point number 2, I want to give you an example. Many of you know the size of a small country called Singapore. When you look on the map, it's a little red dot in the far Southeast Asia. It has only 5 million people. It is composed of 3 different groups. It has got Malays, who are ancient people from Malaya, present-day Malaysia, who are largely of Islamic faith. Then you have ethnic Chinese from southeastern China who settled there in the 1870 in that little entrepot. And they are Buddhists. And then you have the Hindu from largely Sri Lanka today, which was called Ceylon by the British, which was India. They settled in that little country. They have different religions. They have different origin. But they have created a small little country that has a GDP of 372 billion. Okay, Ugandans, some Christians tend to visit Israel. It's a small country you can cross with a helicopter in 45 minutes from east to west. It has less than 10 million people. It has a GDP of 387 billion, somewhere around $60,000 or $50,000 per capita, per person of the Israelis. What have they strengthened? It's not the size. It is the means and the tools of production employed by those people, united to exploit a market and strengthen their country. It's not their color. It's not even their faith that unites them. It is simply the mission that you have as a country, the mission that you have as Africa. So this was my point number 2. Point number 3, in answering those, and I want to tell you, I really appreciate those who spend time, because it's like buying a product. You don't buy a product unless you've studied it, unless you have enjoyed and tried the product, and you raise comments to customer service to handle them. This is why I'm taking time to answer this. The third point in regard to this is the meaning of these fictitious, I call them fictitious because they really are. They are contrived borders which are recent, which sought to hem us in as Africans so that we are very easily governed, we are very easy to administer, but they don't really take away who we are from a historical perspective. Now, I was intrigued recently to find out that this group here, if you find that these borders are done in the 1960s, but they were done prior to that simply to be able to govern Africa, what should you do as a modern African, as a recent young person? What should you do to utilize these borders instead of them hemming you in, and you use them to demonstrate that even a thing that starts bad can be used for good? I found out that in this area, this is South Sudan, in this area called Torit, where I lived recently for about 4 months, there's a group of people called the Lotuk. The Lotuk people are ancient people that occupy Torit all the way to a place called Nadapal as you go to the border area with Kenya. The Lotuk people are cousins of the Karimojong. They also have relatives in Teso. When you come further down here on the northern border, this is Moyo area. If you take this area here as Kitugum, you take this area as Amuru. Here, there are groups of Acholis called Acholi Panikwal. Acholi Panikwal. Acholi Panikwal cross over to this large county called Magui, which is in South Sudan. They cross over to Gulu, and they speak the same language in South Sudan as it is in Uganda. There's another group called Acholi Pajok and another one called Acholi Obor. All of them are a starting point for a united East Africa. Remember, you want these to appear in your constitution. No, you are criticizing those who do not appear on the parliamentary steps. But when you find a border cutting through here, you use the border groups as a starting point for removing these contrived borders which hem us in order to build a larger market. In this Magui County, before I forget, there are people who live in Moyo, who are Madi people. They live in this Magui County. If I go further here in central Equatoria, you'll find the Zandi people who are in DRC, who are in South Sudan, appearing in both areas. So if you find a contrived border which was set up to handle you Africans administratively, you must use it as a starting point for creating unity. Remember, these things, the names I mentioned are all Luos. They are branches of Luos who migrated here in the year 13 to 1400, before the start of the current kingdoms that we have. I mentioned in the last segment about almost everybody claiming to come from the ancient kingdom of Aksum, which was in Ethiopia. If you speak to the people here, the 2-3 larger groups in Kenya, the people here in Kenya call themselves to have come from Aksum. If you speak to here in Lango, the people called the Langi say they came from the same area. But really the point they're speaking about is North Africa fed Central and East Africa, and therefore the borders which are recent, which are a contrivance of either the Germans or the British after 1885 to be able to govern these countries, these territories, for their own execution, for their own administration, we could use them as a starting point for unity. The second way to use, my third point, the second way to use these contrived borders obviously is a question of trade. Trade. We said in our last segment that trade is a beginning point for unity. Now, when you look at our trade with DR Congo, the official figures say between $300 and $500 million annually. But they are talking about official figures. The informal figures put this trade at 700 million. What are we supplying Congo? Cement, manufactured goods, soft drinks, beverages, all those things. What are the raw materials that go into those things? It is raw materials that come from small farmers, that come from small mines to produce crops, to produce cement. So these borders, which are a contrivance of foreigners on us, could be used as starting point to strengthen trade. If I speak about the trade with Kenya, so if we put here trade at 700 million, both formal and informal, and Uganda Revenue Authority is trying to formalize the systems here. We're building, the roads into Congo for supply of goods and services. If you take the 700 million here, and you take these people, I only mentioned the Acholis here, but if I spoke about the people, the Samia people, who are related to people in Buganda and in Western Uganda, if you take the groups here and understand that we were selling up to $500 million before Corona, before the economy started to come down, growth started to come down, if you understand that this $500 million, plus we were selling to Rwanda, where is Rwanda? Here, I think $150 million around 2018 and before. In South Sudan, we're doing $354 million. Even if I just add these figures, the amount of agricultural products, the amount of mineral products, the amount of ceramics, the amount creates jobs. In other words, instead of looking at temporary fictitious borders imposed on us, we should look at them as points of entry to expand production, to expand productivity at a farm and business level, so that more jobs are created here and in the places where we sell. Why is this important? I mentioned two small countries in terms of size, but they are the biggest exporters and attractor of net foreign direct investment in their regions. Singapore, which has only about 6 million people, attracts $275 billion worth of FDI. The total region of Southeast Asia combined is $350 million. So you can imagine some 75% goes to one country, and that country is small. And this country exports to the rest of the world. The same with Israel. Israel, the last time I checked, they were exporting to only one country called America. Now, when I say these things, people will say, but you know, there are some Israelis and Israeli companies in America. So there's back and forth. Well, the Baganda say, Neziko Kolimagali Maji. Start with agricultural products where you are and emphasize export. Israel was exporting $38 billion worth of cut flowers, technology, to just one country called America. Now, I checked the export figures from our country. See, I mentioned these markets. I mentioned these borders. But when you look at our export figures and the total number of companies exporting, then you know why we have a mentality that says, I am good because I am Munyankole. I am good because I come from Mbale. I am good because I am Mutoro. When you look at export figures and the number of companies we have in that area, then you understand the source of this mindset. Uganda has over 500,000 registered companies, according to UBOS. I checked the total number of exporters, 1,170. These are figures 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe they have gone up. But what does that tell you? It tells you something interesting. That, first of all, to export is not as prestigious as to import. When I bring my container from China, and my name is Musoke, everyone in my area says Katiyale se container. It feels prestigious. But when I send out a container full of sorghum or any byproduct, nobody really asks the question. Nobody really wants to find out. Nobody wants to know. Why? Because their attitude is inward looking. I want to tell you something today, that to strengthen the connectedness of our region, it is to use these contrived borders as the basis for springing of exports of our nations to the rest of the world. The total Chinese exports to Uganda is well over 1,100 billion US dollars. The total exports of India into Uganda is around $760 million. If you combine the two biggest exporters to Uganda, it comes to around 1.9 to 2 billion US dollars. And what we sell to them? A very miserable figure. To India, we export $31 million worth of goods, largely raw cotton and coffee. To China, not much, $40 million of almost similar goods. The day we drop the thinking that we're big because of our size of tribes, the day we drop the thinking that we are smarter simply because of the families we came in or the access we have, and focus on that which strengthens all of us, focus on that which strengthens our household income, and create jobs for farmers, for fabricators in Katwe. The moment we fight together to strengthen that, that is the day Africa will stand very strong. Now, I forgot to tell you that it isn't us who are confused as a generation. This confusion has been there for some time, but we end up in a very bad shape by not listening to each other as local people, as Africans. I found a letter which I think was written. Let me check. This letter was written on the 2nd, let me see. Yes, it was written on December the 5th, 1893. It was written by Kabaka Mwanga to his uncle and elder, Omukama Kabalega. Obviously, Kabaka Mwanga had not understood that the fights that had been there between these two kingdoms, again, I don't have time to take you through these fights. All I want to share with you is that from the year 1730 up to 1869, Bunyoro had kings who were not as strong as Kabalega. Between those years, 1730 to 1869, when Kabalega took over, Bunyoro had lost Budu, Bunyoro had lost Toro, Bunyoro had lost many parts. Kabalega came in to recover this. When he tried to recover this, it was a little late, because instead of strengthening the unity he had with his brothers, instead of raising the things that unite us, he was raiding, he was ransacking, but at the same time, the British had arrived, together with the French. They had introduced religions. Now what had been between two brothers had been magnified as differences, introducing new entities. December 5, the year is 1893, and Kabaka Mwanga writes to his uncle. He called him an uncle. He said, and I quote, "I was very pleased when I saw your letter, and so I have written this letter to you. I am your son, but I am the great friend of the white man. I was very angry with you when I heard that you had killed Shukri Effendi." Shukri Effendi was an Arab. These are Arabs. The British colonial Lugard was using them from the Mahdi area, southern Egypt, Sudan. At the time, it was called the Khedive Empire, based in Egypt. So Kabalega had killed one of those, and that you had defeated General Gabuza. This is another general the British were using. And that you had chased out Kasagama. Kasagama is this young prince who had been restored in Toro by Lugard. Kabalega had reconquered Toro. And he said, "For these reasons, you, my uncle, these white men have come into your country. If you want peace, meet them. Agree with them very quickly. I am Sultan Mwanga, the son of Mutesa." Now, this letter was addressed to Sultan. They were now calling themselves Sultan instead of Omukama and Kabaka. This letter is addressed to you, Sultan Kabarega, son of Kamurasi. The reason I'm reading this letter from the archives is to demonstrate to you that when we do not know the common enemy, sometimes we are misled that we are friends of those who are trying to befriend us. A recent friend can try to be more friendly to you than your brother. You can fight with your brother, you can have differences, but you'll never live in another country. You'll never shift the borderlines and become Norwegian, as an example. No pun intended. Now, little did Mwanga know that this is 1893, that in just 6 years, both him and Kabalega would be arrested and exiled in Seychelles. I want to thank you and encourage you to watch again, to get into the system that enhances our trade and export, strengthens our capacity, regardless of these minute differences that tend to separate us. I thank you. God bless you.
We would like to hear from you. Please email us at info@tapmedia.com and visit our website at www.tapmedia.com. You can also visit our offices located at Tomosi Business Park, Luzira, Port Bell Road, or call 0414 220 702. Thank you.